Hi, everybody.
Hola.
Hola. ¿Cómo estás? Today we're going to be talking about content. I want this episode to be called The One About Content. We'll do an ode to Friends. You know how they name every single episode The One About? We'll do this one, The One About Content. And the last couple episodes have been very, very theoretical. This one I want to be very, very practical and actually give you like a 4-step formula. Not necessarily on like how to create a post, because that shit's boring and everybody's going to be different anyway, but who you should be writing towards and how you should be thinking about creating your content depending on where you are in your stage of the journey. So my hope is that this will help you a lot with how to use and perhaps think about content, but also give you like very, very specific guidelines into, okay, here's how I'm doing this. Here's who I'm doing this for. And one of the things I'm kind of struggling with right now in the book, because I'm in the section of the book and that's kind of why I want to present it here, is that the book, the section of the book right now, well, actually, everything's changed, which I haven't really told you. But as of right now, the way that the whole thing is organized is it's called The Obvious Choice, and then it's timeless lessons on simple, profitable, and low stress business for humans is kind of the subtitle. And so it's structured based off of a series of lessons. I think there's 12. And this lesson about social media is actually called Social Media Seduction. And so,
wow.
Yeah, not bad, right?
Yeah.
But what I'm kind of struggling with it though is it's like there's like 5,000 words where I'm not like completely shitting on social media, but I'm not shitting on social media. I mean, if you listen to this podcast a lot, you know my opinion on it. I think that social media is a potential solution, but I don't think it's the solution. I think it's important to work backwards from the problem and not forwards from a assumed only solution. I mean, there were people who made a lot of sales before social media existed. And there are also a lot of people who make a lot of sales without social media. In fact, upwards of 90%. And what actually happens, as you'll hear in this podcast, is when you're relying on something like social media to make sales, you're basically like fighting over the scraps that are only there after all of the obvious choices have already been hired. And again, I don't think that there's anything inherently wrong with it, but I only bring this up at the beginning because this is a part that I'm kind of struggling in the book. Like, I don't want to completely shit on social media. Obviously, I've built like a lot of my business on it. I think that it is a phenomenal tool. I think that though it's very important to use it strategically for what you want to get out of it at that period of time. And I think there are stages of progression in your career of how you should use it and what your goals and outcomes should be. And more so, I look at it as an investment into your future. I view social media, I view content creation as a savings account. You invest into a savings account when you have excess funds, not wanting or not assuming or not expecting any immediate benefit. You hope that it will kick off interest as it goes, but really what you're doing is you're putting money away for the future. And what you're doing is you're improving your reputation. You're making investments, right? And that's how I think people should think about it. It's only frustrating if you are expecting short-term benefits from something that's not designed to give you short-term benefits. It doesn't mean that it doesn't necessarily work sometimes, but it's not designed for that. And so it's hella frustrating if you're trying to get it to use that. So any thoughts on this whole thing before I dive into it, Amber? And I mean, just the kind of like theory, the kind of philosophy towards how I'm attacking this.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear it because I interact pretty much solely with coaches through the Online Training Academy who intend to use it for short-term benefit.
Well, so what do they say? So what are some of the things that they say to you?
What are some of the things I can post to get my family out of financial trouble in the next month? I mean, fundamentally, I'm exaggerating, of course, but I literally had a conversation yesterday. I don't think that's the right use of the word literally, actually. I think that's incorrect. But in any case, I definitely had a conversation yesterday with a gentleman who said, I've been on and off social media. I'd like to build my business. My wife is bearing the brunt of financial stress. I'd like to put her in a position where she no longer has to work at the pace and capacity that she does. So can we do an audit of my social media, see where I'm going wrong? And I'm like, yeah, it'll turn out in about a year.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking in my mind, which is the
No
only
matter
place I
what you
can think.
do, I mean, no matter what you do, it's gonna
Yeah.
turn on you. Well, this is, I mean,
Why do we say
you got
thinking in my mind as if there's another place to think? I don't know why I do that. Thinking what I'm thinking in my mind is like, where the hell else are you gonna think? You thinking in your anus, in your tuck? I'm sorry. Go ahead, John. I didn't mean to
thinking
Well,
in your
interrupt.
it's
anus and your tuk.
Yeah, ain't no thinking.
it's just the way to say, like, in my personal opinion,
That's what I.
that's to
Thank you,
avoid the
Amber.
confrontation of,
Thank
you
you.
know, you just think that works for everything. No,
This is a
it's my
great
opinion.
answer. What a compassionate, empathetic answer to a ridiculously stupid question, Amber. This is why
That's
you're the
kind
heart and
of what
soul
we
of
do
this
here.
organization.
I almost feel like that's almost how we need to like voice this podcast. It's like, what do we do? Well, we give compassionate, empathetic answers to
Right.
absolutely dumb shit, ridiculous questions,
Dude, that's pretty
usually
much it.
sexual innuendos.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, what you just hit on, Ren, is I think a very, very important nuance, which is you got to dig the well before you're thirsty.
Yes.
You can't just like pound a bucket into the ground where there's no well and be like, give me water now. And but that's, I mean, that's kind of the savings account analogy.
Yeah.
What and I mean, to further the savings account analogy, right? When you start to really pull from a savings account, you might not notice it at first, but over time you might actually diminish the value of that account.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can take the interest that kicks off, or you can keep reinvesting the interest, and it'll keep growing over time. But if you ever like really need it,
It's great.
it's there for you.
That's another good analogy though, John, for the conflict, the conundrum that you're in with talking about it. Like it's not like you're saying don't start a savings account. It's a good idea. But what you are saying is if you have an immediate need, get a damn job first. Get a source of income. Like
Right.
you want to start it, but it's not going to solve today's problem with the rent because you're not going to get 1.75% interest today on everything that you will invest in the future. But you should start it. It's just not going to solve your problem today.
Yeah, it's no reason not to do it. Okay. Anything you want to add, Amber, before I kind of dive into a little bit of this? I'm gonna start very high end, and then I'm gonna transition into like the 4 steps.
Yeah. I think it's a lot of the problem, and we see this with a lot of our students, right, is people are given the wrong expectation, which is what you guys are talking about is, you know, my expectation is I post and people or say, here, take my money. Right. But then the other part of that problem is that there are people that seemingly do that. Right. But what's actually happening is those are the people that naturally dig their well, like people who naturally enjoy posting and communicating and doing things online naturally have already been doing that. Right. Where like someone like me, like it takes a lot of effort to do it. And so like, you know, Ren enjoys doing it. So of course, if he puts out a post, he's more likely to get engagement, to get sales versus if I'm going to do it, it's probably going to be crickets. So I don't talk, you know, all that much. And I avoid a lot of talking to people, you know, so like you can't, if you don't use social media on a regular basis, like there's just no way. But from the outside perspective, it looks like it was an overnight success and you just didn't happen to see what they were doing by accident, you know, because they just happened to enjoy it.
Right. Yeah.
I have a confession later in the podcast about that.
Ooh.
I'll wait till Jonathan. It'll be a juicy nugget for later.
Nice.
Tell all expose.
Cliffhanger. Make you stick in for the rest of the episode.
So I'm trying to figure out where to start here.
Where
So I
should we
think I
start,
think what
John?
I'm going to start. I had a very interesting conversation with my literary agent, with this literary agent. I can't say mine yet because I haven't signed the contract yet.
Hmm.
But with this literary agent the other day, and what she was telling me was that publishers have gotten burned so many times by influencers that they gave big book deals,
Mm.
where the book completely bombed, that they don't pay much attention to social media following anymore. She said it used to be many years ago. She said an influencer who had a couple 100,000 followers would get a big advance, and it was just that, just didn't, nothing else really mattered. That was kind of all they looked at. And what they've now realized, because they've gotten burned so many times, was that success on social media as a single data point doesn't prove anything.
Mhm.
They said, this is coming from her, but this is like translated through. She said, think about whether you believe that the people you follow have advanced knowledge worth knowing on a subject, or are they just good at like entertaining around a subject?
Mhm.
And so entertainment's fine. There's nothing wrong with entertainment. It draws a crowd. But as these publishers learned, it doesn't sell to the crowd. Like it entertains them, it gets eyeballs, but it doesn't sell to the crowd. And this is why the majority of particularly young people with big social media accounts, you really only see them selling any combination of commoditized low priced items,
Mhm.
supplement discount codes, t-shirts,
Hmm.
whatever. And it doesn't, like, some of those things blow up. I mean, some of those things become massive companies. I can give you a couple examples of massive clothing companies and supplement companies and stuff that are blown. Most of them don't, though. Most of them do nothing. And so there's, of course, the outliers. Or the only other thing that these people generally sell is a course on how to build a social media following like they
Right.
built their social media following, because there's really nobody who trusts them for anything else. The metrics that you see, I mean, we spoke about this last time, the metrics that you see on social media aren't necessarily the metrics that reflect real success. Instead, they're just how you become famous on that platform.
Mhm.
What the book publishers now look at, rightfully, I mean, they look at social media following for sure, but it's like pretty far down on as one of the data points of what they look at, what they're interested in. What they look at now, what they value now most, is a history of sales,
Mhm.
particularly a history of sales of information products, books ideally, but it could be anything, of information products relevant to the topic matter of the book that you're trying to sell them. In other words, do the people who follow you, or are there people that actually think and are willing to pay anything to know what you know?
Mhm.
Or do those people just like watching you dance? And I think what it comes down to is that knowing what to trust online has kind of become an impossible problem, hasn't it? Because like I don't trust the internet anymore. I just
Right.
simply don't. And the data shows that I'm not alone at all. There was a 2021. So Nielsen publishes a trust in advertising study every year, and you can
Mhm.
Google it. But the 2021 Nielsen Trust in Advertising study showed that 88% of people trust recommendations from people they know, and of everybody interviewed for the study, it was a big study. Only 23% that they trust anything an influencer says. And we've all seen this, haven't we? As technology has progressed, trust in any kind of online media is just shrinking at a deafening pace. And this is going to continue. I don't think that this is going anywhere, because you have things like, let's talk about artificial intelligence first. Artificial intelligence can spit out entire blog posts, social media updates, video scripts in a fraction of a second. AI can create an avatar, have it present a script, and upload that video with a single prompt. People know this. The
Mhm.
people who don't know this are starting to figure this out quickly. There are also fake social media influencers that have amassed huge followings. Literally, like humans that don't exist. They're mostly social experiments, and they're mostly clearly labeled as AI generated at this point, but they won't be for long.
Mhm.
And already, in a lot of cases, it is very hard to tell the human from the computer code. And the computer code doesn't age or gain weight. It's
Mhm.
better looking than you. It never has a bad hair day. and it's always in a good mood. And right now, because advertisers are always going to go to whatever gets them the best response for their money, advertisers are flocking to these avatars. So money's going away from real human influencers, right? It's going towards these avatars. And one article that I read said that advertisers are flocking to these things because they guarantee a trouble-free experience for advertisers in an age of celebrity scandals and influencer controversies.
Mm-hmm.
An AI presence is engineered to be perfection, down to the last wisp of hair on her head. There's an organization that I came across called Virtual Humans, and in an interview with Bloomberg, the founder of it said, "Virtual influencers are cheaper to work with than humans in the long term, are 100% controllable, can appear in many places at once, and most importantly, they never age or die." So I tell you all of this because if you think that there's no way that you can compete, you're fucking right. You have absolutely no chance. But even real influencers, like real influential people, aren't immune from this either. I saw this video last week. It was two of the biggest health influencers in the world. It was Joe Rogan and Andrew Huberman, and they were talking back and forth with one another, recommending the penis pill. And it was a penis enlargement pill. And so they first were speaking about the problem of confidence in young men with smaller penises. Then they mentioned the incredible scientific advantages or advances in the area down under. And then they finished by telling you where to buy the pill bottle, step by step by step, reading the domain out loud. And as you might have already guessed, the video wasn't actually them speaking. It was a deep fake. It was done without their permission as a social experiment this time. Artificial intelligence replaced their lips and voices. Right now, I don't know if you guys know this, one of the top 10 podcasts, health podcasts in the world, isn't read by a human. The team behind Arnold Schwarzenegger's show spent months training an AI engine with his voice. And so the machine, which is funny because it's the Terminator, yeah. The machine can now realistically read anything by him. And I'm told, because I am very good friends with the person who heads up all of his content and has headed up this project, I'm told that Arnold himself can't tell the difference between his voice and the machine-generated one. And Arnold's using this technology for good, right? It's a way for him to add leverage. It's a way for him to help more people get fit. But it's pretty easy to see how the same technology could be used for nefarious purposes. Like if his team can train an AI engine, so can anybody else. There's thousands upon thousands of hours of audio and video from Arnold freely available. All it would take would be for somebody with ill intent to feed that into their own machine to teach Arnold's speech patterns, accent, intonations. And what's to stop somebody from using that same technology to promote untested steroid supplements sold on the dark web targeted towards impressionable young men, as an example? So all of this, none of this is an ethics lecture. I want to slow down and back up. Whether or not what's happening is good or bad is completely irrelevant because it's going to happen whether we like it or not. Ethics isn't the point. To me, the point is that there's no way that we can control this. Pandora's box has been opened. We can't shut it. It's moving so fast that there's zero hope in policing it. This thing works 24/7 at speeds we can't even fathom. It doesn't ever have to sleep. There's no chance that any policing efforts are ever going to work. And all of this is leading trust to anything online to rapidly trend towards zero. At the same time as just the information overload problem is going to grow so much. So there's two problems, right? One is it's impossible to navigate the overwhelming amount of content already. Imagine what it's going to be like in a year or two. Number two, it's impossible to trust content or the people even who produce it. And so it's not saying that I don't think that you should create content. But what I do think is that what we're encountering right now is a problem that I'm going to call the standing on tiptoes at a parade problem. And it goes like this. Imagine you're at a big parade and the crowd's packed and nobody can see. When you get this, short guys,
Absolutely.
We can't see anything at parades.
Yeah. I'm on my
I don't go to
tiptoes
concerts.
Yeah.
There's no point in going to concerts. I can't see anything. So one person at the parade has the idea to stand on his tiptoes. Right, the first person stands on his tiptoes, and for a few seconds it works. He has a really good view. But then everybody else stands on their tiptoes to get a better view. And what happens next, this is according to the investor Warren Buffett, is that your view doesn't improve, but your legs begin to hurt. We've seen this over and over and over and over and over again, haven't we? Every time tech presents a new way to market or create content, it seems like an immediate winner. And by standard measures, it's often better than what you were doing before. It's a more scalable way to reach people, an easier way to entertain, a new filter to be more attractive, a better algorithm, whatever, right? But the problem isn't that it doesn't work. The problem is that it works the same for everybody. So viewed individually, it makes sense to use. But when you view it collectively, everybody's use neutralizes everybody else's, doesn't it? We're all playing the same game, and so we all make it harder for everybody else to win because we're competing with everybody else using these same tools that everybody has the same advantage. Nobody has the advantage. And what happens is that when what initially looks like this advantage, unfortunately results in us all working more and benefiting less. So I don't think that there's anything wrong with artificial intelligence. I think that it has huge benefits and advantages. The only reason that I bring all of this up is that what is going to be coming down the pipeline with information overload, with trust online, to me, so obviously paints a picture of commoditization of information, of a lack of trust. To me, the answer is not, go to the same parade and stand on your tiptoes. It's find our own parade. It's stand out. And maybe that has to do with creating content. And that might be the right solution, but I think we've got to do it very purposefully. Because right now, like I put a post, something to the tune of this. I shared the standing on tiptoes at a parade problem on Facebook the other day. And a lot of people fought me on it. And I think it's because of how I voiced it. I put in a hook that was not there. And there wasn't the context in the book. But at the same time, of course people are going to fight me on it. They're the early adopters who are using it beneficially right now. When the iPhone first came out, and you could take pretty pictures and most people couldn't and put them on Instagram, well, there was a huge advantage. Because your pictures were better than anybody else. Mm-hmm. Some people really won with that. But now everybody's got the same recording studio in their pocket. Nobody has an advantage. Doesn't mean don't do it, but it means that the advantage is elsewhere. Right. Okay. Where do we go from here?
Who knows, John?
Who knows? So let's go here.
Why not?
Why not? I'm kind of jumping around a bit.
Go ahead, House of Pain. Jump up and get down. Jump around. The Arnold thing was funny, man. You can't you just, as soon as somebody says that, can't you hear that beat? And doesn't it drive you just to bob your head? That was like one of the wildest beats to a rap song in the 90s.
We're talking about the Arnold thing? No.
No, the jump around.
The jump around.
That was actually Mrs. Doubtfire at the beginning.
Right.
He had the party for the kids and they were playing House of Pain. Or is that Cypress Hill?
It's Cypress Hill, wasn't it?
Cypress Hill, yeah. I don't know why I said House of Pain.
That's
a Tyler Perry TV show that's awful.
I think I just out rap music too.
You did. Never watched.
90s was like best rap, like for me, like R&B rap, all 90s.
Yeah,
so good.
I search for 90s rap playlists on Spotify.
It's just better. And partly because of what you just said, there was a greater barrier to entry to music production in the 90s that doesn't exist now. So you had to be really good. You had to go through a label. And you had to have equipment that allowed you to be purposeful in a studio to produce that type of stuff. You do that on the phone now. Like most music, you don't need a lot.
You made a really interesting point just there that I've never thought about. But the second you said it, I thought was really interesting. Never thought about that shit. I kind of want to go for a walk and think about this now. The idea of, in the 90s, you went through a label. We went through this big decentralization where all of the gatekeepers were basically thrown out the window and everybody
Gone.
was self-publishing and creating them. I actually wonder whether we're going to go back to gatekeeping.
I fully believe
I'm thinking about books just because that's basically all that I think about these days. But is the value of having like a big recognizable publisher going to be much greater? Because there's really, other than those gatekeepers, how are you ever going to be able to trust the quality of something?
It's got to self-regulate. Music has to self-regulate because it's too easy, particularly with the AI. I heard a song by Drake that Drake never made. It was Drake's voice,
I heard, I saw that.
new beat, excellent rap, not Drake. So
Not Drake
it's
at
got
all.
this industry has to regulate that some kind of way. And I think bringing back the gatekeepers redefines regulatory practices so that you know you're actually listening to the artists that you like. And
Well,
not
so
somebody in the basement.
one of the tipping point moments for me, I was going through the whole thing where it's like, should I self-publish this book? Should I go conventionally published? And one of the tipping points of me was a conversation I had with somebody whose name is Jason Pfeiffer, who's editor-in-chief at Entrepreneur Magazine. He's just become a friend over the years. And I was talking to him on the phone about this question. And what he said to me was, he said, look, like there's a lot of reasons why one or the other might be good. And you know what a lot of those are. Like, I don't need to tell you them. What I can tell you is that from my standpoint, which is an angle you may not have considered it just because you don't know as much about the mass media. He's in charge of one of the biggest magazines in the world, right? Mm-hmm. He said, from my standpoint, I don't even look at books that are self-published. He said people in conventional media just don't even look at them. And the reason is there's just too many things for us to be doing. And that's not me saying that all self-published books are bad, but the odds that it's bad are way higher. Mm-hmm. What I assume when you self-publish a book is that it's not good enough for anybody to publish it. I've gotten sent some books lately from people, and I won't name them, but these things were not well put together. I mean, they just weren't. And yeah, you can get AI to write books and stuff for you now. And I think at one point, it will probably, they'll be really good. And so how will you know, right? There will probably be labels that will come out that's main tagline will be human written books.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, isn't that crazy?
No.
You're going to have people who on their accounts are going to actually write, I actually write these as a human. I don't use AI to write this. It's wild. Okay, let's get into some of the value.
I like
value.
I like that value, man.
So the first time I ever presented this concept, I've told about this experience before, but I haven't spoke about this part of it. Was I was brought in to speak to 16 district managers in this tiny little room downtown Toronto, and the district managers were in charge of effectively 70% of all personal trainers in Canada. And my job was to help them help their staff with content and branding. They were all confused. They didn't know what they were doing. And so the first thing I did was I told them to consider content creation as a savings account, which we spoke about a little bit. You invest into it when you have time and excess capacity. You don't expect it to give you short-term benefit. You expect it to be an investment into your future. And so as a district manager trying to help their trainers get clients, maybe they should be looking at something else. But then what I said to them is, if you are using it to build a brand, a great account has to have a combination of three things. It has to have viral material to attract followers. It has to have value-based material to solve their problems. And it has to include a fair amount of depth to create connection with them. Despite prevailing wisdom, the content that best attracts followers is different from the content that helps those followers or converts those followers into customers. And so a lot of accounts, if you look at them now through this filter, you will notice that a lot of accounts are almost entirely one type of content. And it's not how the content looks. The same, like a video could be any of all three. If you look at my content, like if you message me on Instagram, I can give you examples of all three because I sift through them. Accounts that only include viral material attract the most followers, 100%. They're generally the biggest accounts, but they've got no ability to sell anything, really. They're entertainment accounts, so they'll advertise. And if they get big enough, the advertisements could prove to be meaningful enough to make a difference. But most entertainers, anywhere, this isn't just on social media, most entertainers historically wait tables and bartend on the weekends to make ends meet. And the only thing that's changed now from people going to Hollywood to try to make movies, in the 90s and early 2000s, is that there's just a lot more of them, which means there's way less money to advertise and whatnot through them. And now you don't even need humans. So why would you use a human if you don't need a human? So I think that there could be a business in a purely viral account, but you got to be big and you got to be good. Accounts that only include problem-solving information often lack the followers to make an impact. So if the information might be really good, but there might not be enough people that are there, right? So you need the viral sometimes to attract the eyeballs, and then you need the information to help them. And then if you're only posting depth stuff that's generally like personal information, well, then you're not creating content to build a business or brand. You're just sharing stuff about your personal life with friends. But if you do that in addition to viral stuff to attract people, if you do that in addition to problem-solving stuff to help people take one step forward in whatever they want to achieve, that's of course related to what you sell, what your business does. And then you add some depth so that they can really connect with you from a distance, the stuff that's important to you. Don't bullshit, but like the stuff that's important to you. Then you've got a winning formula. So as you're looking at what you're doing on your accounts, one of the main questions to ask is, am I producing these 3 types of content, or am I just far too much over one? And I would say it would probably change depending on the size of your account. Like if your account is relatively small, call it under 20, 30,000 followers, you should be like 80% viral. Like the other stuff kind of just doesn't matter at this point. Once you get to 20 to 50,000, I would sort of say 50, probably like 50, 55% viral, 40% value, and then like 5, 10% depth. And then it kind of flips. Like the point that I'm at now, with however many followers I have there, I don't even know what it is, but I don't grow that many followers anymore because the vast majority of stuff I do, I would say edging on 70% now, was value. And I only do probably like 15, 20% viral stuff, and then like 10% depth, because I don't really I don't need it to get bigger. And at this point, it will get bigger if I do big things. Like doing stuff in the real world is actually the best way to build a social media following. I want to get into the 4 stages of content creation. Anything to add on that before I dive into this, though?
I held back from saying that's what she said so many times during that explanation.
Which one? Which
Going deep.
It only get bigger if I do stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
If it's big, you'll have success. I mean, there was just a lot. There was so much there inside of my brain. I was just screaming. That's what she said.
I'm told that size doesn't matter as much as we've been led to believe, though. I'm told that it's more about how you use it. This isn't me making any kind of a comment on my own situation.
Just for clarity.
This is what supportive spouses tell the male partner to make the relationship sweeter, John.
I've got a beautiful wife. I've got a beautiful wife. It doesn't matter anymore. I don't need to.
And 2 wondrous sons, 2 wonder-filled male heirs. So you're doing well for yourself.
We've done stuff at least twice.
Yeah, you're right. Right. The proof is there. Yeah. So you're doing well for yourself, John. Good job so far.
We need a drinking game. Sorry.
What's that? Every time that's what she said?
Yeah, well, and like every time that they hear something, they should post and like tag what was said and like tag
I,
us on Instagram every time
I
it
would like
happens.
that very much. I would
Me
like that
too.
very much, Amber. The
I'm
compassion
surprised
knows
at how
no
many people
bounds.
listen. I'm surprised at how many people listen to us in their cars. I
The
get
car
I get a
listeners.
surprising amount of pictures of people like taking a picture of the dashboard of their car as
That's usually where I
guess
listen to
driving
it
to and
too.
from. Is it? Yeah, I
Hmm.
guess. I'm always riding my
Yeah,
bike. Maybe that's why.
There you go.
that's
Try to
where I listen. Yes.
when you listen to yourself on your own podcast, it's entirely masturbatory, isn't it? It really
I
is.
rarely listen. People go to podcasts and I'm like, who said that? You said it. Oh, well, that's great.
Yeah.
That was a good
I'm
line.
smart.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm smart, I'm kind, I'm important.
Oh, I
So
love that song.
so
Uh,
there's 4 stages of
mhm,
content creation. So despite everything that I say very often, and on this podcast and in other places, I do strongly recommend content creation. So long as you're not depending on it to generate customers today.
mhm,
I think that it is a phenomenal way to learn, and I think that it is a phenomenal way to invest into your future. But when you start, as with anything, you're gonna be shit at it.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're just starting at the thing and you're trying to impress the world, and you're getting frustrated that nobody in the world is listening when you've just started to do the thing that you could never reasonably expect to be good at,
mhm,
you shouldn't be surprised. Like anything else, if you want to be good at a thing, you've got to build up your abilities in that over time. And so here's how I recommend doing it. Step 1, create for yourself. Step 2, create for your customers. Step 3, create for your industry.
mhm.
Step 4, create for the world. So let me tell you a little bit about that. Step 1, we'll start here. Step 1, creating for yourself. So Matt Mullenweg, he founded WordPress. He said, when you can write well, you can think well. And to add to that, I'll add, the best way to learn is to teach. When you have to teach somebody something else, an idea, you'll form a greater understanding of that thing. For that reason, I think if you're in the first, call it 3 years of your career, I think that you should create content for yourself in order to learn what you're doing better.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter if anybody else sees it or reads it, and you shouldn't care either way. Doesn't mean you don't put it out there, but your efforts should be on creating the thing and putting it out so that you can learn better. And you put it out and you're not putting much effort or any effort into like sharing, like you share it, but into like marketing that content or frustrated that anybody's seeing it or anything like that.
If anything, be thankful that they haven't, so you can just not focus on any negative reaction.
Because it's going to be
Right.
bad.
Yep. There's always
So-
that person.
So as I'm going through these stages, I'm going to tell you my application of them. And I mean, looking back, it seems like a smooth line. It did not feel like that at the time. But
Mhm.
in 2008, I started my first blog. It was championlifestyle.blogspot.com. Nobody read it. In 2 years, the only comment was for my mom. And during that whole period from like 2008 to 2010, I was training 12 to 14 clients one-on-one every day. I was coming home and I was reading and studying. I would get the NSCA journals. I was reading a lot of research papers. I was reading a lot of books. And I was like studying books. I mean, you look back at the books that I was reading at those times, these things are tagged like mad. What I would do is I'd read books and then I'd go to the back of them and I'd look at the resources that, like, if I found something that I was underlining or that I thought was interesting, I'd go in the back and I'd like circle the resource and I'd go and find that resource and get that book from the library or whatever. Like I was like studying these things, right? And then I would go and I would write a short article on what I was studying and experiencing with customers, like with clients, both,
Mhm.
and also what I was reading. And I think that I didn't, at the time, I was pissed off that nobody was reading my blog. Don't get me wrong. Like I was not like I didn't know what I was doing at the point, but I do think that this is a very important part of my story because I think that it accelerated my learning so much, and I also think that it really helped me improve my writing.
Mm-hmm.
And in the fitness game, we call this putting in the reps, don't we?
Right.
So Stage 2 is for your clients. So, at right now you're listening to this, you probably know enough to help your clients.
Mm-hmm.
You probably, depending on where you're at in your career, but in a lot of cases, in the vast majority of cases, people should stop at stage 2, to be honest, and just do stage 2 until they're done their career, until they retire. But at this stage, you know enough to help your clients, but you don't know anything that's new or revolutionary that anybody outside of the people who already know you would really care about. Still, what you know will benefit the people you already serve because it comes from you. It's the same information they get from somebody else. You've read the same books. You've listened to the same fucking Andrew Huberman podcast as everybody else. Like, you're just spitting out information that you heard. It's not mixed with years of hard fought experience and wisdom in that you can spit it then back out in a new way that is interesting in some way because of some really unique experience that you've had. Mm-hmm. But they'll be happy to get the information from you and not a random person online because it's valuable information, but it's not the type of information that's going to make you stand out in the world.
Right.
It's just useful information for anybody because useful information is useful information and it's going to be valuable to come from you. And so unless you have huge ambitions of being an influencer, I don't think that you ever need to create content for people you don't have an existing connection to. I think it is inherently incredibly valuable to create content for yourself, to get better, to learn better, and then to serve the people you already work with. Already a lot of businesses have assets like past leads that they never communicate with. And that was the case with this room of fitness district managers. I was like, so, okay, guys, you're in charge of like, God, I don't even know how many, like 2,000 gyms or something across Canada between these like 16 people. It's like, how big do you think the email list is combined of past leads that you have nationwide? How big do you think each facility, so they each manage a bunch of facilities, and then there's a facility manager for each facility, and then there's trainers underneath that facility manager. I was like, how big do you think the past lead list is for each facility? And I mean, like tens of thousands of people. It's like, you don't need to use social media to talk to people who have never been to your gym. And also you're a local gym, so why would you even do this? So a lot of businesses have assets like past lead lists that they never communicate with. And that was the case with these people. If you're sitting there and you're saying, well, I don't have any customers. I mean, you're probably still in step 1 and you should be creating content for yourself. And then you should be going out doing a lot of the other stuff that we talk about in other episodes here. Maybe I'll recommend a podcast at the end of this one to listen to. It's not social media. It's not content that's going to get you your first ever client. Like, it's just not going to happen. So writing for your clients. It could be a social media account. I like a newsletter more, if I'm honest, but for your clients. And there doesn't need to be a lot of people. And so here's my application of this. In 2010, I basically like converted my blog over to jonathangoodman.ca, like just a new website. And on it, what I started to do when I started that one is I'd write answers to questions my clients were asking me in the gym. And these articles acted as first as a referral source. It was just an easy way for existing customers to pass along stuff to family and friends. And so I'd write an article, client asked me about back pain or whatever it is, and I'd answer their question, and then I'd write an article about the thing. And then that client would have a family friend who had back pain, and instead of saying, go to John, he can help you, they'd be like, oh, my trainer wrote an article about that. And these would start to be referral sources. But then a few times, these articles would start to go viral because if my clients were asking these questions, oftentimes other people were asking these questions. Right. And so some of them caught fire. And I think that they caught fire largely because I was doing it to legitimately like answer questions that people were asking. I wasn't doing it. I was so ignorant. I didn't know what, like, I didn't even know that like going viral was a thing. This was like 2010. But some of them got the attention. Some of them did end up getting the attention of influential publications. And it got me like media attention. I was named by Livestrong one of the 45 best trainers you've never heard of. Men's Health started putting me in books. I got offered a writing spot on Schwarzenegger's blog. Like, none of this happened because I was trying to make it happen. It happened because at this point I had been writing for 3 years about the stuff I was learning, training a lot of people. And at this point, I was answering the questions that my clients were asking with 3 years of experience writing about health and fitness. I was probably good compared to a lot of the stuff that everybody else was doing out there. And so stage 2 for your clients. I think most people should probably stop there. And reputationally, it's going to really help you. But if you do want to continue, stage 3 is for your industry. So at a certain point in time, you'll have figured out some stuff. Nobody outside of your industry will care, but people in your field will start naturally asking you how the heck you do what you do.
Right.
If this isn't already happening naturally, you probably shouldn't be creating content on it yet. But teaching others inside your industry is a pretty natural path to begin branching outside of your bubble. And it could easily lead to a host of different business opportunities that progressively become bigger and bigger and give you more varied experience in different things than the one way you provide service or the one product that you offer. So, I mean, my application here is pretty obvious. In 2011, I started the Personal Trainer Development Center website. It started just as my writing, but then I began to publish articles by other industry experts. And then by 2015, the site had 4 million visitors. From 2011 to 2019, but keep in mind, by 2015, I had 4 million visitors. I had been writing for 7 years.
Right.
At this point. 7 years. And then from 2011 to 2019, I hosted 5 conferences. I published 11 books. I developed 6 digital products. I published over 1,500 articles from over 800 experts. And I built a certification course. And then at some point, maybe, at the end of all of this, you might be ready to create content that the world might care about. You might have that rarefied combination of knowledge, hard-won experience. You might have just done a bunch of shit that's like interesting, that people you don't know and have no connection to you in any way might care about. Basically, you've learned, you've done, and you've built in that order. And I feel like I'm like maybe kind of starting to be at that point now. Okay, it's 2023. I started this process in 2008. To give you an idea, 15 years of producing content. I don't want to say every day, but pretty much every day for 15 years. I calculated like, I mean, I have no idea because I haven't counted, but based off of more or less how much I write in a day and how many years I've been doing this, I've written something like 10 million words for the health and fitness industry.
That's cool.
And only now at this point do I feel like maybe I'm starting to have a little bit of something that somebody might care about that's not in my industry. The reason why it's so hard, I think, to stand out on social media is pretty simple when you break it down. Is that there's no reason anybody should care about you or what you have to say. You're simply not that special yet. And maybe that sounds harsh, but there's a lot of people saying a lot of stuff on social media, isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. What I think instead is that it's just really important to say, nah, here's where I am right now. I think everybody should be creating content. Right? There's 4 stages to it. But you don't need to... Your business shouldn't rely on you getting famous on the internet in order to break through. If that happens, and it does happen, like you're going to come to me and you're going to say, oh, but what about this guy? What about this gal, right, who broke through when they're brand new to the industry and they're in their 20s and like people love them and they created an app and they've made millions of dollars. It's like, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but give me 10 examples of that. I mean, you can't pick out an outlier who had some weird combination of just timing, luck, natural gift. And then I'd also question like what other skills that person had. I remember I was at a dinner with Eugene Tao, from he's from New Zealand, but he was in Toronto, and went out to dinner with him, and I remember looking at him at dinner, and I was just like, I'm fascinated by you. And he's got a huge following and does amazing work, teaches biomechanics and stuff. And I was like, I'm fascinated by you. He's like, what? Why? It's like, you're obviously really good at this fitness thing, but you have this combination of skills that 10 years ago would be so weird and completely irrelevant. But for some reason, right now, at this exact juncture in time, the fact that you have a background in music production and audio engineering, the fact that you have a really keen design sense, not just design sense, but like Japanese minimalistic design, which is like the in vogue design. It's this joke, like it's like the Airbnb design, right? Everything looks the same. It's like the fact that you have this keen design sense, and the fact that you're a fitness guy, that you're able to bring these three together. And then, of course, you had the wherewithal in your like early 20s to fly out. Like, I think he flew out like Tom Platz. He flew out like everybody to New Zealand and like put him up and hosted seminars by them, like when he was in his early 20s. And it's like, it's this weird, almost inexplainable combination of skills that you just naturally had because you have all of these weird geeky obsessions that came together at the perfect time for you. I was like, obviously you're super smart and super good at what you do, but so are a lot of people. And it's when you think about that, I think it's fascinating. And so none of this is to say that you shouldn't build on social media. I mean, I'm expecting that you probably clicked onto this website looking for some tips of like, how do I create better posts? It's like, well, I mean, the answer to that is viral value depth. But more than anything else, what I hope you get out of this is, all right, here's where I am right now in that stage progression. And here's my desired audience. And then don't get beaten down if you're not getting certain benefits from it. Look at it as an investment. Look at it as something like, I know that I'm not doing this for today. I know that I'm doing this for a better tomorrow. You don't lift a weight 10 times and say, well, shit, I'm not ripped yet. No, you're like, I'm doing this because it kind of feels good today. I know what place this serves in my life. And I know that 10 years, 20 years down the road, I'm going to be really happy that I showed up today and did this thing.
Right.
I think that's how we have to look about it.
I think that's valid, John. It's valuable for people. It's setting the expectation. And one thing social media does of its own accord, ridiculously horribly, is set the expectation of its users. Because the expectation that social media purports is that get on this thing, do something really interesting. A week from now, you're going to be a millionaire because you're going to go viral. That's how it works here, right? And then social media entices you to do it repeatedly. It's like, you know what it's like? It's like golf. I'm not a great golfer, but the first time I ever played golf, I sank a 25-foot putt.
Really?
I have played golf for 10 years after that, based on the exhilaration of that 125-foot putt. And I've sucked every step of the way. But I keep coming back.
There's a name for that phenomenon. I don't know what it is, but the phenomenon is basically like, it's actually a really bad thing long term to have a lot of success
Initially,
with something
yes.
initially like that.
Yes.
It's actually negative long term because you gain an unrealistic assessment of your abilities. We see this with investors all the time. People who properly guess some like short selling of some stock or something going somewhere, and then they just keep making bets and bets and bets and lose their shirt. It's like, why do you think casinos put you up in a suite and give you free drinks for as long as you want once you've won big? It's like, because they know that once you've won big, you're going to keep playing and you're going to lose more.
Yes. Yes. Whatever that thing is, whatever that phenomenon.
I don't think that's quite true. I mean, I do think that that it could work in stepwise fashions, but just because you did one thing and it worked really well, and let's say it went viral, doesn't mean you're going to be able to recreate that ever. But it does mean that you might have more eyeballs on you, which can be quite beneficial.
Or detrimental, depending on what you do after the eyeballs show up. You get eyeballs on you after, 6-7 years of writing. It's probably going to be a good thing. Get eyeballs on you after like 3.5 months of posting. The eyeballs are probably going to be disappointed. Go away.
Well, especially if you jump on a trend and you catch it at the right time, and there isn't really any like depth to what you're saying, but you just figured out how to like do this one type of edits or something like that. That was successful. And I admittedly probably veer too far on the other side of that spectrum, where I fight, like the minute that something becomes successful and something starts to work, I actually lose interest in it, whereas I would probably benefit if I jumped on trends a little bit more.
Right.
But in the long term, to me, it's kind of, I shouldn't lose interest because it's successful. Like even books, like if a book is really popular, like I don't want to read it. And that's a stupid thing. It's like, it's probably popular because it's good. It's the one that's out now, Peter Attia, like his Outlive. It's like, I'm fighting myself from buying it because other people like it, which is stupid. And I know that. But with this, the way that I kind of justify it to myself is, well, I actually don't know yet whether this is going to be like a long-term thing or a short-term thing. But I know that what I'm doing is going to work if I keep doing it long term. And I know that there's an opportunity cost, not just in missing out on that, but there's an opportunity cost in not doing what I'm already doing to the same extent. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to appreciate that opportunity cost too. And so I'm going to miss out on some stuff. Absolutely. But I'm not willing to investigate whether the stuff that I'm missing out on could be stuff that's really important for me to do, because I just kind of want to do my thing. And I know that that's going to work over the long term. It might not work like potentially as big as other stuff, but I do think that it will work more reliably.
We call that, amongst my friends, we call that the show mo no. Are you familiar with the show mo no? Have you ever been introduced to this?
No, but I want to end on this. What is this?
It's when you give up your show thing to try to get some more things, and you end up with no things. Show mo no.
Okay, wait. Back up. Show mo no. So that's like a girl thing. That's like when you give up like your main girl for like a side piece, and then you have no piece.
It could be that. It could be money. Give it your for show money to try to get some more money. You end up with no money. The show mo no. The show mo no gets you every time. And if you are doing something that's trending, if you're doing something that you're consistent at, it's steady, it's progressive, just keep doing that. Stop trying to hack everything and
can see John
revolutionize
typing.
everything. Yeah.
No, I don't even, this is not, I can't write that in a book. Are you kidding me?
Okay, some of the things that we have said on this podcast and that you've sent us that you are putting into the book, that is by far not the weirdest thing.
Aren't there some tidy whitey references in
yeah, can I read that?
Yes, of course.
Yeah,
let me find it. Let's finish this. That's one of my favorite sections. I gotta search for it because I don't have it open.
The joy on his face right now.
Well, every once in a while I write something, I'm like, oh, I think I'm the first person to come up with this, and it's really fucking funny. So, this is a super short section that like transitions into another section.
Sweet Jesus.
So there's obviously not like value in this one, but the title of the section is "Create Content?" ? Profit. So there's an episode of South Park where a company of gnomes steals underwear. And when asked why, they lay out their master plan. If you've seen this episode, it goes like this. Phase 1, steal underpants. Phase 2, ? Phase 3, profit. Now, this might surprise you, but I'm no master underwear thief. Still, it's obvious even to my no underwear stealing self that the above plan's missing something. So silly examples like this, they're pretty useful sometimes for examining deep problems. So let's explore this one. So the gnomes don't have any idea how stealing underpants leads to profit, but they've gotten good at it. You'd think at one point a wise gnome would stand up and say, "Yo, gnomies, we've got a lot of underpants but no profit. Maybe taking tidy whities ain't good business after all." But they don't. Because by this point, the gnomes are so used to dutifully collecting underpants that it's all they know. That's the section. Yo, gnomies.
I want to buy a book that has the words "Yo, gnomies" in it for no other reason.
It needs to be a shirt, the Shionomis.
Let me recommend another podcast and we'll get out of here. So episode 16 is what I recommend you listen to next if this subject is something you want to dive deep on. The title of it is The Sweet Spot of Followers and Celebrity. And we go a lot deeper into how many followers do you really need? Like what makes a difference? Like what, and so you got an idea of that here, but we get into it a lot deeper in that episode. So that's episode 16, The Sweet Spot of Followers and Celebrity. And once again, thanks for being here. Thanks for joining us on the Obvious Choice podcast. I almost got the name wrong again. See you later, Nomi.
All right, Nomis.